Dragon Ball FighterZ is, depending on your criteria, arguably one of the most visually impressive games ever released. Developed by Arc System Works and building off the aesthetic pioneered in Guilty Gear Xrd, FighterZ almost demands a double take on initial impression due to the painstaking efforts ArcSys has gone to take their fully 3D assets and animate them in such a way that they read almost imperceptibly as the 2D anime the game is based off of. It's a show-stopping display of technical and aesthetic mastery, and all I gotta say is, where have you people been? I've been fapping to this look since 2014. All that being said, as close as FighterZ comes to hitting the mark, there is still a bit of an uncanny valley effect to certain shots of the game. While character-centric animations like intros and taunts look spot on, doubt starts to creep in whenever there are a plethora of effects and camera movements, and this is due to the game's only visual concession to gameplay over raw aesthetic: frame rate. FighterZ is a video game. Stunning revelation, I know. But as a video game, especially one on a modern platform, certain expectations for visual presentation are assumed. Most console video games animate at a constant 30 frames per second, but as consumers become more aware of the benefits of higher frame rates, combined with the new Pro console midlife refresh, games running at 60 frames per second have become increasingly in demand. In addition to just the raw aesthetic though, high-level fighting game players benefit greatly from having a game running at a higher frame rate. More frames per second means more unique frames of animation for each move, which help players read game movement and predict which attacks are coming next and react accordingly. If you gimp the frame rate, the game becomes more difficult to read and, by extension, more difficult to play. FighterZ answers the call on both counts by running at a constant 60 frames per second, and while this makes for a better video game experience, it actually detracts from the believability of being a 2D anime. Because anime doesn't animate at 60 FPS, it doesn't even animate at 30. The frame rate of most anime is 24 frames per second, with camera pans and tweens running full bore, and characters typically animating at an even lower frame rate, anywhere between 8 to 12 frames per second depending on the intensity of the scene. High energy fights can be animated at a full 24, but obviously this is still far lower than the 60 frames of FighterZ. FighterZ has no issue emulating the look of the characters though, even with its higher frame rate, because it doesn't animate its characters using tweens, a technique of having the computer automatically smooth out an animation as is traditionally done in video games. Instead, it instantly pops from keyframe to keyframe using what's called constant interpolation. This makes character animation in the game read almost identically to traditional cell animation in standard anime, and is also why FighterZ footage featuring just character movements looks the most convincing. The effects and camera work in the game, however, are tweened, and run at a native 60 frames per second. So when the scene is full of energy blasts and camera pans through the environment, things start to feel kinda wonky. Since no 2D anime runs at 60 frames, you inevitably get a slightly different look. Thus the integrity of the emulation is tainted, if only just so. A great example of this is this video posted by GameSpot comparing footage from FighterZ cutscenes and the anime footage it's based on. Key blasts from the game tend to stand out here since they're tweening at 60 FPS in the FighterZ footage compared to the sub 24 FPS when hand animated in the show. However, if we take this clip and dial it down from 60 FPS to 24, we can actually mitigate this distinction greatly. While FighterZ still looks like a game, the lower frame rate brings the tweens more in line with the look of the anime, and thus the uncanny valley effect is lessened. 24 FPS is obviously less demanding on the hardware running the game than 60 FPS, so there's no technical reason that ArcSys couldn't have just let the game run this way. But due to the nature of fighting games and the reliance on frame counting and high-level play, it was necessary to make the aesthetic sacrifice for the integrity of the gameplay. Now, I know what you're thinking, dude, what the fuck, this is the most nitpicky art-faggy complaint I've ever heard, and you're totally right. I'm honestly not even complaining. Like I said at the top, I love ArcSys aesthetic ever since Xrd was dropped in 2014. I think they're doing some of the best work in the industry, and it was their GDC presentation that finally pushed me over the edge to start pursuing non-photo 3D animation myself. The point of this video isn't to criticize or complain, but rather to clarify. I know some people have been less of a fan of this art style ever since Guilty Gear, feeling like it was still a step too far removed from the genuine article to be convincing. All I wanted to do here was explain where that step came from. Hey there, thanks a lot for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I have a whole playlist packed with videos breaking down 3D as an art form, so if the nitpicking I did here seemed interesting, there's more where that came from. Also, I want to give a shout out to all my patrons that you're seeing on screen for funding this video. $1 a month gets you access to a bunch of exclusive content and helps me out more than you know. And finally, I gotta give a shout out to my buddy Hirosashi for explaining to my casual ass what frame counting is and how it works. Until next time, I'm Tom Oliver, and I'll talk to you in the next video.